Hey everyone, this is Mike, and today I'm going to be doing the level 80 overview of the Samurai. Going from Stormblood to Shadowbringers, not a lot has changed. It's mainly some small quality of life changes as well as some cool new moves. But one big thing that changed its rotation though is the fact that we now use our Sen abilities a lot more, aka our AI Jutsu. Like in Stormblood we had this skill called Hagakure, that would convert the Sen gauge that we have into the Kinky Gauge, which is kind of like a gauge that you fill over time by just doing GCDs and positionals. But now Hagakure is changed slightly, mainly so that you can use it in dungeons to reset your gauge before a fight, so that you're not using your like your damaging combo or your attack speed combo while you already have those Sen active. So the way Samurai flows is they have 3 different combos. Each combo gives you 1 Sen. The Sen are those 3 symbols that you can see on the screen. And then you can execute what is called your AI Jutsu, and depending on how many Sen you have, you will execute a different attack. It doesn't matter which Sen you have, it matters how many you have. So with the ninja, with the mudras, you had to press a certain combination of buttons. With Samurai, you just need a certain amount of Sen. And depending on how many you have a different action that you will execute when you use AI Jutsu. For your Kinky Gauge, this is a gauge that just fills over time as you're hitting the boss, as well as hitting your positionals. You get 5 Kinky per GCD, and you also get 5 Kinky when you hit your positional. And then one of your GCDs also generates a 5 extra as well. So it basically goes in between you executing your 3 combos, rotating through all 3 of those to get your Sen, and then using those Sen on your AI Jutsu, and then in between you spend your Kinky Gauge on certain off-global cooldowns, which are called Hisatsus. And that's pretty much that. Like, Samurai is a relatively simple and straightforward job, but that doesn't mean that it is really fun to play. So let's take a closer look. Samurai has 3 main combos. The first one that you want to use in most cases is going to be the Shifu Kasha. This one is going to give you your attack speed buff. That's why most people like using this one first. And this will also grant you a red Sen on your Sen gauge, as you can see. Second combo that we have is our Jinpu into Gecko. This will give us our blue seal, or blue-white seal, I guess you could say. And this will apply Jinpu, which is a damage buff. So you want to use these 2 straight after each other so you can get both your attack speed as well as your damage buff up. Last but not least, we have a 1-2 combo, which is Yukikaze. This doesn't really give you anything other than just damage, but it's mainly to fill your Sen gauge and get that 3rd Sen going. Now, as you can see, we have this button right here called, well, now it's called Midare Setsugeka. So when I use it, we have a cast bar and we deal the damage. But now, as you can see, it transformed back into AI Jutsu. So if I use, for example, my short combo, I now have 1 Sen. Now I have access to Egon Bannon. This is a 1-minute damage over time effect. This is by far the strongest skill that you have. So you want to try and keep this up on the boss at all times. It does have a 1-minute timer on it. So you basically want to try and, I believe if it ticked for 48 seconds or something, it was worth. So when there's 12 seconds or less on the dot, you can start replacing it because it was already worth. But of course, try to reapply this dot as low, like when there's as least amount of time on it left as possible, because that will give you the biggest damage increase. So this is really strong. You're usually not really going to be using it in AoE scenarios, of course, as you don't have the time to just apply it to all of the mobs, and the mobs die too fast for you to get the effect of it. But on boss fights, this is really strong. It's your strongest move, and you can make this a lot stronger as well by using something like your Kaiten, which I'll talk about in just a sec, as well as the fact that it's 1 minute, so it lines up with all of the raid buffs, or like most of the raid buffs at least. So this is really strong. Now, I'm gonna go and get myself a 2nd Sen, and then this transforms into Tenka Goken. This is your AoE skill, just looks like this. And then I'm going to be using Meiko Shisui. This allows you to use 3 different GCDs back to back, and you can also use your AI Jutsu in between this, so you can technically use 4 GCDs if one of them was AI Jutsu. So when you use this, you get 3 GCDs without needing the combo string required. So you basically use this to use your 3 combo finishers to get your 3 AI Jutsu, and then we have our Midare right here. And I'll just apply Egon Bannon to show you what it looks like as well. It looks like this. And then as you can see, we have a 1 minute dot on the boss. Now, as you can see, there is one other button that is changing as well, which is this one over here. Now this one's called Tsubame Gaishi. This is basically a mirage of the previous AI Jutsu that you used. Now you can only use it straight after using an AI Jutsu. So if I get a Sen again, and I use my AI Jutsu, you can now see that I can use this gauge, but if I use another GCD, it'll go away. So you need to use this straight after using one of your AI Jutsus. So let's say I use my Meiko again, and then I do this, and then you can immediately use this. This is also an instant cast ability, whereas all of your other AI Jutsus are a casted ability, because you kind of like sheathe your sword and then you prepare to like strike, whatever. So that's that. Those are all of the things that you can do with your AI Jutsu. Relatively simple. In most cases you're going to be using Midare Setsugeka, which is the 3 Sen one. Then of course if you need to reapply your dot, you use that one. And you always want to be using Kaiten to make your next AI Jutsu stronger. So what this does is basically you use it, and the next GCD that you use is going to have increased power by 50%. But it's not worth using on any of your normal GCDs, it's only worth using on your AI Jutsus. So usually what you do is you just get any AI Jutsu ready, you press Kaiten, and then you press your AI Jutsu, and then that is that. This also got its cooldown lowered, so you can now use something like, for example, get 3 Sen, use Midare, and then get 1 Sen, like using Meiko Shisui, and then you can have this again, because this used to be 5 seconds, so that wasn't possible before. But we got some quality of life in the patch 5.08, which makes it so that you can now use 2 like very close together AI Jutsus without this not being ready. So that's really good. Now let's take a look at our off-global cooldowns, because there we have our Kenki spenders. Now, as I said, you get 5 Kenki per GCD, but on top of that, Yukikaze just increases your Kinky Gauge by 15, and we also have, of course, our positionals. So when it comes to our attack speed combo, this one you want to execute from the flank, the final hit on it, and then you'll generate 10 Kenki instead of 5. When it comes to our Gecko combo, or our damage combo, you want to execute that one from the back to get the 5 extra Kenki. Unlike the other melees, you don't get potency increases when you do your positionals correct, but you do get extra Kenki bar, which then technically translates into more damage. Now, to spend our Kenki, we have a few different abilities. First of all, the one that you're going to be using the most is Shinten. This is just a single target attack that does some damage, uses 25 gauge. We also have an AoE variant of this, which is Q10. So you basically just use this, I believe it is worth it from 3 targets and up. Then the more powerful ones are Sene and Guren. Now these share a cooldown, and the reason being is Guren is for AoE, worth it from 2 targets, and Sene is our single target version. So since we're on a single target, we're going to use Sene, because that is more worth. This expends 50 gauge, so that's quite a lot. And it's also on a 2-minute cooldown. This is the only thing in your like your Genki spenders that is on a big cooldown. We also have an ability to generate 50 Kenki in one go, which is called Ikishoten. So you want to use this on cooldown to generate your Kenki. And then we have, of course, our Kaiten, as I said before, to use together with your AI Jutsus. But we also have a Gap Closer and a Backstab. Now, what is so special about this one is it basically makes your ranged attack stronger. So we have a ranged attack called MP. This will generate 10 Kenki Gauge. But when we use this after our Backstab, or Yaten, you'll see that our MP is now enhanced. So when we use it, it does more damage. And then we can go back in with our Gyoten, which is our Gap Closer. Unlike Monk or Dragoon, our Gap Closer and our Backstab cost Kenki Gauge and deal very little damage. So when you can prevent using these, don't use them because it's not as efficient as spending it on Shinten. But of course, if you need it as a gap closer, it is better to use this than to miss a GCD. So this or those two. Other than that, we still have one last Kenki spender, which I can't show you because I can't get hit, which is Sagan. This is basically a cheaper, less damaging version of Shinten, but it is more damage per gauge spent. Now, the way you can use this is when you're under the effect of Merciful Eyes, which is this skill right here. When you use Third Eye, you reduce the damage taken by yourself by 10%, I believe. Yeah, 10%, and it lasts for 3 seconds. Now, when you get hit by damage, when you have this buff active, you're granted the effect Open Eyes. And Open Eyes allows you to do two things. One, use the Sagan, and two, use Merciful Eyes. Merciful Eyes is like a mini second wind, so it restores some HP. But in general, you're going to be using this on Sagan. So that's how you get that. This is also a very short cooldown. So if you want to optimize the damage that you deal as a samurai, you're gonna want to get used to which rate-wide AoEs that you can use this on, so that you can use as many Sagans as possible. As I said before, we have Hagakure. This transforms our Sen gauge into Kenki, but right now it gives very little Kenki for Sen converted, so you basically don't really use this unless you're in like a dungeon or something, or after some downtime where you don't have your buffs up. If I have right now, like I don't have my buffs up, so if I were to use my Kasha and Gecko combo, I'm basically overwriting these Sen. So I would use Hagakure to get rid of the Sen, and then I could apply both of my effects again and get new Sen in place. Last but not least, we do have our AoE combo. They both start off with Fuga. This is a cleave in front of you, so you do need to position yourself for this one. And then this combos into either Mangetsu or Oka. Mangetsu will do two things for you. First of all, it will extend the Jinpu buff, which is your damage buff. Oka will extend the Shifu buff, which is your attack speed buff. So you do need to apply your damage buff and your attack speed buff before you use these, or they won't like refresh the duration of them. I think it increases by 10 seconds? No, it's 15 seconds. Up to a maximum of 40, which is the maximum duration that the buff will always have. Other than that, it will also give you a Sen. So when you use Mangetsu, we get the blue one, and when we use Oka, we get the red one. And this will always give you enough Kinky Gauge as well, so that you can basically use like the Mangetsu combo, the Oka combo, and then you have enough Kenki and Sens to use Kaiten, and then spend it on your Tenka Goken, and then you can use your Tsubame Gaishi when that's up as well. And then of course you can use your Guren, which is a line AoE, which is the same cooldown thingy with Sene. And then you can of course spend any extra Kenki Gauge that you generate on Kyuten, and then of course when you have stuff like your Eikishoten up, you can use that as well, so that you can spam this some more. So AoE is pretty strong. You can of course also use Meiko Shisui on this. If you use Meiko Shisui, then you can just use your combo finishers, and then like do a Tenka Goken in between, and then use another combo finisher. Well, press the wrong button there, but you get the idea. So that's Samurai. It's a pretty simple flowing job. You basically rotate through all three of your different combo strings that you want to do. Doing this will automatically apply all of your damage buff and your speed buffs. Anytime that your Iaijutsu comes up, you want to be using Kaiten to make your Iaijutsu stronger. And then when you do have all three of your Sen up and your Tsubame Gaishi is ready, then you want to be using that one as well. And then of course any extra Kenki that we generate, we spend on our, what's it called again? Our Shintens. And then of course when we have our Meiko Shisui, we can immediately go in and do some big damage as well. So that's pretty much Samurai. It's a pretty simple job. There is some nice fight optimization that you can do around this third eye. And also when you're looking at a fight that has very short phases, you might need to look in if using Hikenbana is worth it or not, because if, for example, say it only ticks for 25 seconds or something, then it's not worth using on a mob that dies that fast. So you do kind of need to look at that. But other than that, Samurai is pretty fun. It flows really nice together. It's not super active, as you're mainly just like going through your 1, 2, 3s and then spamming some shintens. But it is really nice that right now we are using our AI Jutsu gauge a whole lot more than we used to back in the day in Stormblood, because we would just convert them with Hagakure and then spam some more shintens in most cases. So having this there is really fun. Now there's one last thing I forgot to tell you about, which is meditation, which is this thing right here. As you'll see at the start of the video, I sometimes use meditation in between GCDs. This basically makes you meditate, but every server tick, it will also give you Kenki and also a meditate stack. Now, if I use my meditate here, you do need to be in combat for this. You can see that I am granted 10 Kenki every time the server tick happens. But other than that, you can see that I also have meditation stacks. Now, these stacks you can spend on Shoha, which is an off-global cooldown ability that looks freaking amazing. And it does more damage depending on how many meditation stacks you have. If you use meditation or meditate in between GCDs, then you'll only really be able to get one if you're lucky, because if you're not lucky, then you're not going to get any at all, because of how the server tick system works, which is kind of shitty to be honest, but it's just what it is. But when there's some downtime, you can use this, meditate for as long as possible, and then when the boss reappears, you can hit it, and then you can use your Shoha to do a cool attack and do some extra damage to the boss. That's also why you want to try and fish for meditate stacks, so you can at least get that 100 potency out of it, because it's free damage, so might as well try and use it. So that's Samurai. It's a pretty cool job, pretty fun, flows well. It also had its damage increased in patch 5.08 to make it more in line with the other melee DPS. Right now Samurai has the lowest raid DPS at like the highest level of play, but when you are an amazing Samurai and you're playing with people that are maybe not as skilled as you are, then you are somebody that can carry the damage though, because Samurai's personal DPS is the highest out of all of the DPS jobs out there. I think only Black Mage beats it. So when it comes to personal DPS, Samurai is one of the highest up there, but because it has no raid cooldowns that they can use like raid buffs, Samurai's raid damage is a bit lower than all of the others. But that of course depends also with what team that you're playing with, and if you are the better player in the team, then it's usually better to take a Samurai than something like a Ninja, because Ninja's personal damage is really low, but it buffs the raid a lot. But if the raid party is pretty bad, then it's better to take a Samurai, because you can carry the damage a lot more on something like a Samurai than something like a Ninja. So with all of that being said, I hope you learned something today, and I want to thank you for watching as well. I'll see you in the next one.